the milk. You can't go to a grocery store and find whole milk yogurt anymore. Why? Because everybody thinks fat's bad. Or is it that the USDA and big dairy wants you to have skim milk and then crave the fat in the form of cream cheese, butter, and ice cream later? If God wanted milk to be skim, he would have put a cream separator on the udder of a cow. And since he didn't, we capture all the dairy. We call it true whole milk. We culture it in the form of our amasi or our really raw cheese. And I believe that it's going to wake up people that have been avoiding dairy, have been consuming alternatives that are inferior like rice or soy. I just met a woman recently who said, Jordan, we came to your conference and just tried some amasi. We can't handle dairy at all. They're from the Middle East. They're Jewish people, but they're Israeli Jews. And you look at Jewish people, African Americans, and people from Eastern India, we can't tolerate dairy in America. But you look back and see Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, you see the Maasai tribe, they thrived on it. What's the difference? A tiny little protein that we found in dairy, and we've eliminated it through ancient breeding, and that's just one reason why our grain-fed dairy is so unique.
So now, is the Beyond Organic dairy, does it have a different type of cow and a different process than what we would see in?
All the above.
Okay.
A different cow, different feed, different process. Just to give you an example, people will ask, Jordan, how do you do raw milk everywhere? Well, our cheese can be raw. We don't heat the milk above cow body temperature. We age it for 60 days. But our amasi is not technically raw. We process it at a temperature below which proteins are denatured, below which the probiotics are destroyed in total. Then we culture it. But here's when people say, well, Jordan, what about other dairies? Why don't they do this? It's simple. It takes us 180 times longer, 180 times longer to process our milk according to the USDA standards than it does the organic or the commercial high temperature processed group. We do that because we believe proteins and nutrients need to be in their natural state. And it's just one example of what we do to comply with regulations, but do it in a way that's old school, for lack of a better term.
Okay, well, that seems to be your theme, is going back to what the original principles were for a lot of things. With Beyond Organics, where do you see Beyond Organics taking the American dinner table?
Well, we have a 2020 vision. So we're sitting here in 2011, soon to be 2012. By the end of this decade, I have a vision to see 1 million people living beyond organic. But not only that, because of our unique model where we take our food from our farm to your family, not in health food stores. I love health food stores, but we can't have middle people. I want you to know what you're getting, where you're getting it from, and best of all, if you share it with people, there's a chance you can eat Beyond Organic for free. And I envision doctors, pastors, stay-at-home moms who homeschool their kids. They eat the food. They tell their friends, because you do anyway. Everyone, new health food store opens up, we're telling 6, 10 friends, new restaurant. What if you could do that and then serve what you believe to be some of the healthiest foods and beverages in the world and do it for free? That's the vision of Beyond Organic.
Have you had any concerns or major frustrations taking a project on this big and literally changing the way people eat?
Every day. I talked earlier about how you know you're called, as I mentioned, and number one, you're tried. So you go through trials which lead you by compulsion to share the message. You have people oppose you, you have opposition. You get weary, and then you want to quit every day. If you don't have those 4 things, then I don't think you're called. You're probably just doing something that other people could do. And I said number 5, and most important, Jordan, why do you do this? Because no one else did. If I could buy these foods somewhere, if I could buy these beverages somewhere, Beyond Organic wouldn't exist. It exists for me, for my family, and then for everyone else who gets to share in it.
What do you say to some of the people who, especially now with the relatively recently released China study, as far as moving more towards a fully plant-based diet? I don't know if I've tried that. I know I have to have a certain amount of meat in my diet. What are your thoughts on that?
Every person that I've met in natural health that I trust is a recovering vegetarian or vegan, without exception. I was a vegan for the first 4.5 years of my life, not by choice, but that's what my parents did. I tried it again during my illness. I could list person after person. 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 10,000 can do a completely plant-based diet and do great. An omnivorous diet of the right kind of foods is the way to go. However, if you're going to eat the standard American diet and get your meat in the form of 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, different story. I'd rather have a plant-based diet than a junk food diet. But outside of that, I believe that for thousands of years of human history, we have consumed healthy animal foods. And here's something that really gets vegetarians and vegans sideways, because I watch our cattle, okay? They eat greens, not just grass. We're talking about grasses, legumes like clover, forbs like sunflower, and herbs like dandelion. So that's why we call it green-fed. It's not necessarily environmental. It's because it's more technically correct. They're not just eating grasses. When they produce milk, you know what they're doing? They are concentrating the nutrients in vegetables in a form that's easier to digest without the fiber to impede the nutrition, and immediately absorbed. So I don't look at milk as white death like some people do. My parents did when I was born. It was all about being a vegan and milk is terrible for you. We're the only species on the planet that drinks milk after we're weaned. Last I checked, we're the only species that sends text messages or blogs. You know, I mean, it's not really applicable. I believe that the dairy and the meat that we provide is green food, concentrated and more absorbable. The iron goes from a non-heme plant-based iron in the grass to a absorbable iron in the meat. So I'm not saying you need to eat red meat every day, but if you're a woman who's premenopausal and you have fatigue, you're extremely moody, you lack energy, so many people are going around deficient in iron, they don't know it, and they say, Jordan, I'm iron deficient, I lack energy, what do I do? Eat a steak, but make sure it's green-fed.
So if you can clear it up a little bit, as simply as you can put it, what would you say the main difference is between a Beyond Organic steak and a steak I buy at Publix?
Well, it's a pretty loaded question because there's several groups of and qualifications that meat would go on. We do conventional, then we call, I call it industrial organic because it's the big organic producers, and then Beyond Organic. What I like to say are our green finished beef, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So let me paint the end of the life of an organic cow. Okay. You're in an area where you're consuming grains. They're organic. You're not getting pesticides. You're not getting growth promotants, things like that, but you can eat as much grain as you want. There's no mandatory amount of green food. And remember, a cow is only meant to eat greens. That's how they were created physiologically and anatomically. There's a gate in the back that would give you the mandatory access to pasture, but you're sitting there getting the food right in front of you. You don't have to move for it. It's kind of like if a human being was put on the 10th floor of a building and there's an open window and you say that you have access to the street, you're not going to jump. So they have access to pasture, they're fattening up on grain, the important fatty acids are lessening, the inflammatory fatty acids are increasing, the new emerging fatty acid called CLA is dropping to the floor. That's industrial organic. Now that's pretty good when you think about that compared to feedlot or CAFO, combined animal feed operation. You know what they eat in 90 days? Animal brains and body parts. And by the way, that's not good. That's how mad cow and all that started, Johne's disease. They eat stale grain that's genetically modified. They're given antibiotics and growth promotants to gain 4.5 pounds a day. And they can consume things like chicken manure. I think I mentioned blood. If I didn't, they can consume blood and stale candy with the wrapper on it. Now, I'm not sure how candy gets stale, but they can consume it, and to replace the fiber, a plastic-like substance that will help add fiber to their diet, similarly to if they were grazing. Now, Beyond Organic, pretty simple. End of their life, green pastures, not sprayed, not fertilized, grasses, herbs, legumes, and forbs, sunshine, fresh air, tons of space, and not only that, not only how they're finished, but how they are processed. We use age-old biblical processing methods to properly remove the blood and some of the other chemicals, because if an animal is traumatized at the end of its life, it's pretty bad. And I know for some people who are vegetarians, I could put any word in front of slaughter and it still sounds bad. I believe we have dominion over these animals. I believe we've been given dominion, and my animals live a long, healthy life till the second they become food. And when they do, we remove the cover fat, because God says not only is the life in the blood, but the fatty portions are mine. So we remove the fat that could possibly be a storehouse for toxins. And they get a type of beef that really is unavailable today, which is both biblically finished or raised and biblically processed. You see, grass-fed and organic is pretty good, but it's killed wrong. Kosher beef is raised wrong. So we've combined the two in really a unique, biblically correct way to eat something that our ancestors would eat whenever they could. Beef is not a luxury. It was a necessity when anyone could get it because of the storehouse of nutrients. There's about 8 vitamins, minerals, and amino acids in beef that people buy in the form of a pill at a health food store.
So at the baseline minimum, when somebody purchases a Beyond Organic beef, they know that it's being green-fed, grass-fed. It doesn't have GMOs or any grains going in. The end of the life of the cow is humane, and from almost like you said, from soup to nuts, that it's following a natural course of how it lands on your table.
Absolutely. And the dairy, the same. And dairy's even more rare because dairymen after dairymen said you can't do a grass-fed or green-fed dairy. You can. You just can't do it in mega quantities.
With the beef, now are you saying the way that the cow is raised, the cow is treated, the cow is fed, that the actual nutrients in the beef are higher than what you would
Absolutely.
Find?
If you look at research, you'll find nutrients like vitamin E. You'll find omega-3 fatty acids and CLA. In fact, a feedlot steer, which 90% of the beef in America comes from, the CLA is virtually zero. But in a pasture-raised or green-fed steer, we're seeing 250 or more milligrams of CLA per serving. The biggest key, what you look for, if you were just looking at ground beef in a laboratory, the biggest indicator of how the animal was finished is the ratio of omega-6 fats to omega-3, which many are saying is the most critical component of our diet. If someone said, what is the one thing I can do to be healthier? A lot of us would say, balance your omega-6 and your omega-3 fats. Today's day and age, it's estimated that we consume 20 to 32 times more omega-6s than omega-3s. The ideal ratio is between 4 to 1 and 1 to 1. The last test we had of our green-fed beef, it was 2.2 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. Our green-fed dairy, 1.2 omega-6 to 1 omega-3, 1.5 to 1. So we're really excited about our early results.
I hear your passion talking about your product, but it also sounds like you're heavy into the science and the research on this. Is this one of the quality control checks that you guys have in place?
Well, I'm not the quality control guy, but we have a great director of quality control. And what I've found, Dr. Brent, when I've traveled, is I would go to these small sustainable farms and I would fantasize about getting there and seeing the vision of agriculture lived out. And I'd see the vision in their voice and in the farmer's face, but then I would watch as they couldn't afford, due to lack of resources, to conform with regulations and safety standards. I see raw dairies getting shut down and all of us cry foul, but then you look at their track record and they failed this inspection and that inspection. So we are taking small, old world processing, small farm model, and complying with local and federal regulations to do something that is above board and complying with what needs to be complied with so that you can feel safe about what you're getting. I mean, I buy things that have no label. I buy things from back alleys where I meet a farmer and I have to bring cash only and an unmarked cooler and only use my first name.
I would have never thought they would have seen raw pasteurized milk treated like drugs.
Yeah, but you know, when I'm asked to recommend people, hey, should I get that dairy? I'm thinking, gosh, I'm recommending someone to give something to their kids that I have no idea what it really is. I believe it. I'm fine to take a risk, but when it comes to other people's health, I need to know with my own eyes. And so I have been so blessed to be involved, everything from how we treat the soil to how we treat the animals to how we treat the finished product. It all matters. And again, I don't want Beyond Organic to be the only game in town. I want to lead a health revolution due to this revelation, and that's a big part of what we're doing.
All right, so this is a side question. I've got 3 kids. You've got 3 kids. What was in your kids' lunch boxes today?
Two of them, I have kids that like different things, so 2 of them I think had almond butter and organic jelly with whole grain sourdough toast. They had apples and they drink water, which is good. Even when I was a kid, my parents allowed me to drink a lot of concentrated juices and things, but my kids eat great. And the key is for me, I give them so much nutrition at breakfast that even if they didn't eat the rest of the day, they'd be good.
So, I'm really curious about Beyond Organic. I'm an entrepreneur too. I like doing big things. At what point did you get that aha moment that, Beyond Organic was your next big venture?